Hello guys and girls of the TSBA. We've been asked to do a little show and tell on home bake tanks. So today I'm trying to make a homemade video with a real cheap camera and no assistance. So we'll see how this goes, and maybe you can learn something by my trials and errors. Let's start over here on the end. The very most basic and my first bake tank. That's it. Yep, it was a 55-gallon drum. I cut it down to about 30 gallon. I put a band around the top edge of it, if you might be able to see that, so that the lid will go right back on it for transportation purposes. Now, if you notice, I have a bubble box on here, which happens to be battery operated, and it goes into the tank. It has air stones down at the bottom. Simple transportation method for not a large amount of shad. That bubbler is just not sufficient, but it will help in time of need. Of course, if you can get it home, I use a 110 bubbler that is powered by 110 and does the same thing. A couple of stones goes in the bottom of the tank and it'll bubble as long as necessary. The thing about this is it doesn't have any kind of filtration system, so about the only thing I use it for anymore is if I go to catch a large amount of bait, I'll put it in that tank as well as my vest tank, Super Bait Tank 2, in the boat, and then I can haul almost double the amount of bait. Then I'll step on over to the next tank that I used, and it's very basic operation, and I mean very basic. It had a swimming pool external type pump that you come right out of the bottom of the tank right into the pump. Then you just go out of the pump back up to my particular homemade filtering system, which is held by this wooden contraption I made. I'll take this out so we can see it better. But it was designed as to fill this 5-gallon bucket full of filter material with a bunch of holes drilled in the bottom. And then when you bring the spray in from the pump, it has spray on the bottom side so that it disperses it completely on the filtering material. So that's a pretty easy setup to make. Like I say, it's as simple as out of the tank into the pump, out of the pump into the bucket, then it drains back into the tank. Now here's something that's kindly important. Notice the filtering screen I have there at the bottom. It works, but it's not a very good design, simply for one reason alone. If you have a bait die off, even as many as 10 or 12 will suck right to that filter or strainer in the bottom of the tank and stop it up. So there's no circulation, and that's hard on your pump at that particular time. So I don't know that I'd recommend it other than for your first setup. This setup, as far as the 275-gallon tank, those pumps are swimming pool pump from Walmart for 20 bucks, a tank for 40 bucks, and that's pretty much it. The bucket, a couple of fittings, and you've got a 275 gallon homemade bait tank. Now let's move over to the functioning tank at this moment. It's a 325 gallon tank. It's set up completely different. It has a 50 gallon drum for its filter. As you see, the bottom white pipe there is coming out of the bottom of the tank, or the drum. Sorry, let me start all over. The pipe coming out of the tank goes into the top of the 50 gallon drum in my case, and then through the filter material, and then is pushed out the bottom pipe and up to the top of the tank and over into the tank. Now this configuration here, as you see, is spray barring effect. I have one little tip out on the end just doing forceful water, and that is normally not in that position, but I put it there just so you could see it. It normally swings to the left and you can't see it, and it's out of the way, and it causes the water to go in a circular motion. Let me turn the pump off just a moment. This is the next most important thing in my mind. Hey, there's actually some bait in there. See that bar at the bottom? That's my new filter screen, you might call it, that just simply lays in there. It's a piece of PVC with holes drilled. If you spun it over, it's got 4 sets of holes. It reaches from one side of the tank to the other. It can't get stopped up unless you had 4 inches of bait dye and just completely cover up the whole pipe. If they get down toward the left hand end over here, it'll just pull water from all the way up through here, so that you virtually can't stop it up. I'm going to show you underneath. It's just a PVC. None of mine is even glued together at this point. It's just stuck together, and it's been working that way for a year or two. So I'm going to turn it back on. But by the way, I'll get to that in a moment, but that's a 2,600 gallon per hour pump. Pretty much overkill, but I wanted plenty of force and plenty of variation, and I think with this setup I've got it, because it works real well. I'll go ahead and talk about the filtration system. Like I said, it comes out of the bottom of the tank, goes up and into the drum. I did put, I can't even think what you call them at this moment, but you know, bulkheads in this particular drum. Then it goes through the filter material, and the pump is sitting in the bottom of this tank, so that it pumps right out of the pump into here, around that pipe, back there behind it, and feeds it back into, of course, the tank. Now, I've got 2 ways of controlling the pressure, and the pressure has to do with how much water you have in the tank at one time. You can have it considerably fuller than that. It's about halfway full in my case. And or you can adjust the flow via this point or at this point. Just depends on if you're trying to slow down the outflow to the big tank, or you're trying to slow down the inflow to the 55 gallon drum. I have this bung on here for my UV light, but I don't have it in place, so I won't even get into that, but that's what that extra bung there is for. Pretty elementary. It's a $60 drum, brand new, $20 worth of piping, a $69 pump inside the drum, and a $40, again, water tank. A couple of more items I'm going to mention while we're here is, if I catch a lot of bait, I have this 800 pump here, you might see, with a Danco on the end of it. And it just simply drops in the water. And you plug it up, and it makes extra oil. I'm not going to turn it on today, but with this pump, it is very directional. You can stick it to the side of the tank and blow the water in any direction you so desire for your circular motion, if that's what you're trying to achieve, circular motion. I don't know that circular motion in my case is real helpful, but it does help keep the tank clean in the bottom. You notice in the bottom of this tank, it's actually, the dark you see is fish debris. The brownish is rust stains from, I had a wire thing in there one time and it rusted and it stained the tank a little bit, but all those fish seem to be real happy in there. So we'll let them go back to, well, let me show you this. Making air. As I've turned the pump off, it proceeds to fill up this barrel. And the longer you have the pump off, the more pressure is developed from this tank pushing down and pushes it into there to a point that it's full or overrunning. The balance on this particular tank is 250 gallons of water, and even if the power goes out, it won't overflow the barrel. It will just make it full. So, of course, when you turn the pump back on, it immediately starts drawing down the water in the barrel to run it through the filter in the method in which I have chose to do it. So with that, I'll lay the lid back on it and show you a couple of things that I've done. In the bottom of the 55-gallon drum, there is a milk crate turned upside down and set over top of the pump so that debris can't get to the pump. I used a material like this. It's just a sheet of, I guess it's insulation, well, fiber. I wrapped it around the milk crate in a manner that it's up like that in the tank. It's wrapped around the milk crate. And then I cut another piece very similar to this piece and laid it on top of the milk crate to hold bigger debris. Then I took this plain old fiber fill from Walmart, polyfill, and packed the whole top of the barrel for the layer that the water actually runs through first. So that's what's inside the tank, is a pump and filter material. So that's pretty much how this tank functions. The more water you have in the big tank, the more pressure it puts out through the pipe and into the drum. So you could raise your drum higher or lower from the ground to achieve a pressure that you might like if it was going to, let's say, the power go off for hours and you didn't want the tank flooding, because without those bulkheads and a sealed lid, it would definitely just run water out in your yard, in your floor, in your garage, on your back porch. So I keep mine at a balance of about 250 gallons in this tank so that it don't backfill and overflow. The last thing I'll mention is winter time. People have trouble with bait in the winter, but here's what I use. It's a plain old 200-watt aquarium heater. And I have it on a 24-hour timer that you can notice is on and off every hour. And in the winter time, that does an efficient job of keeping it from freezing, for one thing. And I put a sheet of plastic up in front of this door for winter time right there, so that it holds the wind and stuff out, so I can maintain about 50 degrees with that little 200-watt heater for the wintertime use. Summertime, my bait tank temperature in this little lean-to shed I've made maintains about pretty close to river and lake temperature combined, meaning, you know, the lakes always get hotter and the rivers are always colder, so I can maintain under 80 degrees easy with no cooling whatsoever, and that's satisfactory for summertime bait. With that being said, I'm going to set this camera back down. Come back to the picture for a moment and just say, bait tanks are pretty fun too, guys. I don't know, if you like fishing, you like catching bait. It's something that I started out learning with Ezel Cox and have took many tips from many masters. This is not, I say it is not 100% the best tank, but it works fine for me. I usually maintain about 150 bait at all times. These 30 that are in here now are my test batch for the year, and they've been in there almost a week, and they're clean and shiny and pretty and ready to go fishing. The last thing I'll mention that I didn't mention is the salt, of course, and things that you put in your tank. If you're not going to use a UV filter, I suggest being in the shade for sure, for temperature for one thing. And salt, I use a cup for 20 gallons. So right now I've got approximately 12 cups in there. It's 10 cups for 200 gallons. So I've got about 250 in there, and I put a couple of extra cups. Seems to work fine. I do keep some equipment for testing nitrates and nitrites and pH and other things, but if you get it set up right, that's probably one of the least of your worries. The only problem I have with the tank is trying to keep too many bait, meaning in this tank I can keep probably 200 or better shad, dollar bill size, or 300 or 400 alewives. But the alewives do like a cooler temperature for sure than the shad, so I don't hardly mix bait. I try to have one or the other in there at all times. And the salt, the bio starter that I use the bio starter that comes from Walmart. It's $5. Treats 480 gallons. Pour the whole bottle in there and your bio is started. So once it's started, I probably won't change water all year. However, I do change 50 gallons of water at a time. When I come out here and dip my bait out with the big bait net that you can't see, I just dip it out, put it right in the bait tank in the boat, which the water in the bait tank in the boat come right out of here. So that gives me opportunity to swap 40 to 50 gallons of water. Every time I go fishing, I get to take out 40 or 50 gallons and add back 40 or 50 gallons. And with that, another cup of salt a lot of times. So There's a variety of ways to do it. Hope this video was informative. I can give you an exact part list of the bulkheads, the part numbers, the pump numbers, things of that nature. If you so desire them, just PM me on the Facebook members page and we'll be happy to help you get set up with a home tank. Thanks for watching. Hope it wasn't too bad.